Seven years ago, I filmed a documentary entitled Reaching Beyond about Irena Orlov, a unique piano teacher, someone who has enhanced the lives of many people around the world and has become one of the most influential figures in the lives of her students. In 2006, Levine Music School in Washington, D.C. held a celebration of Irena's 50-year career as a piano teacher. In the course of the celebration, the documentary Reaching Beyond was shown. Later, it was also shown in France, Israel, and Russia. Thousands of people watched the film and were impressed with the amazing personality of the heroine, as was I when I first met her. At that time, I could not imagine how often I would be asked about Irena Orlov and her method of teaching. My fellow musicians wanted to know whether I had observed Irena's lessons and why I had not included more of her lessons in the film. I tried to explain that one cannot learn Irena's method of teaching by observing just a few of her lessons. Nevertheless, people kept asking what Irena's secret might be, whether her insight into what teaching entails is miraculous, and what, if anything, I knew about Irena's students' further development and music careers. I could not answer these questions, even though I very much wished that I could. Having been a musician my whole life, I understand my colleagues' interest in Irena Orlov's teaching philosophy. In an attempt to shed more light on some features of Irena's teaching, I decided to go back to Washington, meet with Irena and her students, and let them answer the questions that had been posed to me. I'm not certain that it is possible to gain insight into Irena's gift, but being in her presence and listening to her students describe their experiences with her has undoubtedly proven to be invaluable, as I hope you will agree.
I'm not sure if there's specific secret. I'd say I think she has an amazing way of really reeling people in. It's almost like a force she has around her. There's no way to not come back to it. I personally was thinking that I wasn't even going to continue piano after I graduated here. My mom always told me, that's something you're always going to have in your life. And Irena told me the same thing. And I absolutely loved it, but I never thought that I would be as pulled towards it. And after this year, I found myself constantly, little things just in life. Didn't have anything to do with piano. I would think of what Irena would tell me, or just little things that I heard from her outside of piano class. And I'd be like, I felt myself constantly coming back to that. So now I am going to be taking piano lessons this following semester. Coming back here was, I don't know, it was absolutely an unbelievable experience. I think that's really the secret. She just has an amazing way of keeping people connected to her.
I would say a lot of her charm and her ability to influence people is in the outside-of-the-box thinking that she inspires in her students, at least with me. She would always think of ways off the piano to make me think of things to apply to the piano. She would make me think of, imagine that this is a troll and play as if it were a little, goblin kind of like hopping around. And I would imagine that and then be able to apply it to the piano instead of telling me play staccato. She told me to imagine an image and then put that image into the music. And that was what inspired me more. And a lot of her influence also came just from an improvisatory kind of teaching, which was after every lesson, she would play a little thing. Yeah. Children know it. And she would let the student, based on the key, figure out what to play. So I would play. And that's the way that everyone ended their lessons. And I think that's something that every Irena student can say she does. And that's a really great thing about her.
Many of Irena's former students keep a close connection with her, so I was not surprised to find two former students visiting Irena. The main subject of their conversation was Irena's teaching. Those of you who saw Reaching Beyond should easily recognize Irena's guests, Dr. Ralitsa Patcheva and Sam Post, Irena's former students and now colleagues. They also teach at Levine Music School. To them, I readdressed some of the questions that I had been asked in hopes that they would include those questions in their discussion. I thought that hearing about Irena's teaching from their perspective would be especially valuable. As I had expected, Irena did not think that there was anything miraculous about her teaching.
My life is very lucky. Everything was very, very lucky. At a very early age, I discovered that I wanted to teach. Then I met people who influenced very strongly on my teaching. And one of them was Mikhail Kravitz. He worked in Moscow. He took a lot of untalented kids. He was a violinist. And at the end of the year, every kid had perfect pitch. We worked, let's say, on the same way with parallel ideas. Because at this time, I announced that I want to teach people without talent, without knowing about Kravitz. And I took a group of people who got very negative grades for ear, memory, and rhythm. And the article was in the newspaper, and Kravitz found me. And he said, I have the same ideas, let's meet. So he was working in Podolsk, somewhere in
the outskirts.
Yeah, out of the Moscow. And I came and saw. I didn't believe my eyes. Really. It was our Stolyarski of our days. You know who Stolyarski is. It was a great violin teacher who taught Oistrach and Yasha Heifetz and all of them. So it was Stolyarski of our days, but Stolyarski took only talented people, and he took only everybody. So I learned a lot. And first of all, I learned how to develop a perfect pitch. It's very easy. Can you believe
I
it?
love it when you say that, yes.
It's very easy because kids in the early age, they like stories, they like fairy tales, and when you tell them a story, and every character of the story has his or her own pitch, they remember this pitch. And you tell this story many, many times, and then you just play the notes. What is that? Oh, this is the rooster. What is that? Oh, this is the little hen, right? And they know the pitch. So you kill 3 birds in one stone. Pitch, imagination, rhythm, freedom, joy. I don't know how many birds you kill at the same time. So that was kind of inspiration of Kravitz. And the second luck in my life was Mariana Robertovna Friendly. I came to Mariana Robertovna with a lot of pain in my shoulders, arms, wrists, and in 1 year, that was really a miracle. Because she showed me some exercises, all the pain disappeared, technique improved, I entered to conservatory with grade A, and I consider these 2 miracles a basic of my work. So they were miracles. I was not. I'm a follower. This is how I work on, let's say, technical things. Ear and hands, arms, body.
Another reason for many pedagogues and parents and otherwise people to exclaim that what you do is a miracle and wanting to know your secrets is the fact that many of your students, or let's say, one would pretty much say all of your students, sooner or later are successful in some of the product delivery of music, right? Either in their performances, or in competitions and so on. But generally, when people hear your students perform, they hear something unique in that. And so another question that arises is, since you despise and do not use the element of intimidation, which very often helps teachers to achieve those successes, what do you substitute it with, or how do you establish discipline? How do you establish this, element of music education, that the students practice and
Right, so that I never ask students if they practice. You know that, right?
Yeah.
I always say, I'm here to help you to do what you want to do. Sometimes I use some shrewd things, like, okay, please do as much as you can and I will see what you are capable of. It's very powerful. Every student wants to show what he is capable of, I remember, since Sam is here, Sam came from summer vacations. Or I can remember about you, the same story. Sam came from summer vacations, brought me 6 preludes and fugues by Bach. He was 12, 13? How old you were?
I don't remember.
I was absolutely stunned. So when the lesson was finished, his mom called. Irena, how is Sam? I said, what's wrong? he's wonderful. He said he's so upset. He wanted to bring 12 preludes and fugues, but he had time only for 6. You know? Stimulation. I left for 3 weeks for vacation. Left for you Bach concerto, Haydn concerto, and Beethoven concerto. Do you remember that? When I came back and you put all this on my stand, and I said, you learned some concerto? Which one? You said all of them.
it's very interesting for me, you know, now looking back and talking with you about how you teach, because you know, when taking lessons, we don't think about it so much. No, certainly,
you
hardly.
have no comparison.
No comparison, but I do remember, you know, when I guess I started with you when I was 8 or 9. I think 9, maybe even 10.
9 exactly.
And coming into the lessons, I was expecting something more like what Ralitza was describing, Russian, sort of intimidating, sort of, that kind of thing. So I sort of did have a little bit of a comparison, and right away I realized I had, someone had given me a very, very different impression from what was the reality. Because other than it, so I was expecting this, like you were saying, how much do you practice, like expecting a certain amount and things like that. But of course it was never like that. It's true, at the time I just kind of let it go. I didn't think about it, but it's true that you never asked how much we practiced or told us how.
Assignments?
Yeah, no
I didn't give you
assignments.
assignments.
Yeah.
I said you can look at this, and this, and this, and this, and tell me what you choose.
Mhm.
I think her secret is that she really loves all of her students. And each student who comes in, she takes them where they are, at whatever level they are, and however they're able to perform. And she's not judgmental, and she encourages them. And I think you can feel the love and the sensitivity, and if anything, that's the secret.
So somehow one is ageless when one studies with you. I really feel that little kids are treated like grown-ups, and grown-ups are treated like kids, and in a good way. Basically, you don't notice any difference and you do not really purposefully adapt your language to more cute for a little child, more analytical for an adult, which is actually another thing that doesn't come immediately to everybody's mind. Certainly not to mine. To think that a 60-year-old adult would benefit from a moment of childhood.
Can you describe the most challenging teaching experience
Yeah,
you had?
yeah, it is going right now. It is going right now with my new student, who's a genius. The genius of the caliber that I heard about Mozart or about, this kind of people. Impossible to teach. Impossible. He wants to study. No, he wants to learn things but he doesn't want to be taught. 3 months I cried after the lessons, and I couldn't find a way to this boy. And finally I did. So what I found is, I saw his eyes when I said, "May I tell you a story?" And he had like a story. And he listened like that. And I said, "But you know, I will tell you a story and play music at the same time, because the story in the music." So since then, he comes to the lesson and said, "I wish you would tell me a new story." So after I tell him a story and play whatever, I give him the music. He comes home. I don't say practice that, right? He comes home. He tells this story to his mom, to his dad, to his babysitter, to his 1-year-old brother. Somehow he practices that with playing that. Try. Try to teach one like that. What is the name of the story?
My little stubborn brother.
Is your little brother stubborn?
Yes.
Okay. I will tell you a story about your stubborn brother. And
My brother is not stubborn.
of course
today.
not. But listen.
Whoa. Oh, that's what Johnny did to scare me.
I did scare you?
I said that didn't scare me.
It didn't scare
Because
you.
remember the times it does? I can even play this on my piano.
Speaking of Mozart, another very remarkable thing about your teaching, when I've observed you teaching very young children, is that you very early on, during the first year, start encouraging your students to compose or create music as they go.
That's right. Not all of them, but most of them. For example, first assignment for Sam for composing was when I asked him to write a cadenza for Bach D minor concerto. And he did. I had no idea that he can do that, but I said, try. If they could, why wouldn't you? But the composing is the way to teach them notes. And this is because they are much more interested to play their song and learn how to play their song than to play song by Mike Parr or I don't know who. So that's how they learn notes and don't notice that they do. And of course, a lot of stories about notes. Now I use your story.
Which story?
Oh, I love this story. I love this story. I don't know how I changed it, but the first time I heard it from you on the telephone, when there were in Musicland that I'm telling a story about, right? There were a lot of sounds that were like balls flying on the air. And the Queen G and the King F decided to put them on place where everybody can find them. So first was The first was Queen G, that was sitting on the second line, and she called G from the air, and G was sitting next to Queen G. And F said, I also have a favorite note. My favorite note is F, and he did it. You know, it's very symmetrical. G on the second line, F on the second line from up, and it's very... So I use your story a lot.
Well, the Queen G, that's all your story. It's just the balloons.
Balloons,
Mine is-
yeah,
mine is just the
but
balloon
it
part.
was so wonderful. That's about. I will tell you again.
Beginners, whom Irena encourages to compose their original music, and in this way not only to unleash their creative energy, but also to learn the notes, will work hard for a long time before becoming a professional musician, one who can compose a cycle of variations on a popular tune, like Sam Post. Sam's performance of his piece became one of the climatic moments in the recital of Irena's students.
First time I came to have a lesson with you at your house, and I was looking at these paintings, which were really unusual for me, and it was unusual for me to see paintings, like real paintings,
in the house,
in a person's house, and abstract paintings. You know, not the portrait of, you know, the person who lives there or their relatives, but like, so I kept looking at them, and I really liked this one, and you know, I didn't ask you who are the, you know, what and so on. I was too shy for that. And then sometime later you assigned me a piece by Schnittke, and I had never played Schnittke. And as I started working on this piece, one of the first lessons that I brought it to you, you started talking to me about those paintings, and you showed me a picture of the artist, and you showed yourself in the picture too, because it was a picture of a whole group of people who were in this Russian dissidents group. And this was actually, I mean, on another subject that was very fascinating to my parents, because we had only heard of the famous Russian intelligentsia and the dissidents, and that's a really different part of the story, but my father was really soaking all of your stories in too. But for me, this connection suddenly of this music that I'm playing is connected to those paintings that surround me, is connected to, you as my piano teacher are actually not just my piano teacher. You're opening this whole new world for me, which I've never, seen, visited before. And so this experience, years later in college, we were told how Neuhaus says in his book that, when you study music, you cannot just study music, you have to go to the museum, you have to look at the paintings, you have to read. And I thought, yeah? Do we need to discuss that? And partly it was because you had, you hadn't even told me you have to go to the museum. You actually told me the stories. This transition that music is not just a solitary art, but it's connected to other arts, was another one of those discoveries that I made, being your student.
I want to add to your story that Sam and you played this piece. Sam also played this piece by Schnitke.
Variations?
Yeah, on one chord, right? And for him, I didn't show this because he didn't see it. I tried to show Sam some pictures. He said, "So what?" It was in his, interest. This comparison. I don't remember. I should use some associations when you learn this piece, right, to make it more interesting. But I don't remember what. With Ralts, I do remember that it was particular that picture, this one. But with you, I don't remember. Do you remember?
Not really, but I just know, it's never, for me, it's the visual art has, as you know, it's never been the same kind of connection for me.
Yeah, so that's what we're talking about needs. I thought that she was hungry for this knowledge, right? With you, probably it was different association. So it means that, Ralitsa, you first put this formula. Irena doesn't play with work with piece. Irena works with a person, and that's correct. I understood it only after you said it, because I really don't work with particular piece. I work with a person, and I think that playing every piece, it changes you. It changes you, and it adds something to your personality. It expand your reality.
Just to add to that, I think, just being...
For me.
Sort of being such a model for a friend for such a long time, and it's something that it can be kind of unusual, first... given my expectation, coming into the lessons just as a teacher and a student, and then to have that, immediately sort of flipped around, or not flipped around, but so that we're on the same level, and that, I've always been able to come to you and learn and play or ask any sort of question, and that's been true now for almost 20 years, I guess. So.
Yeah.
So in terms of changing me as a person, I think just having that in a teacher, in a role model has changed me a lot, for sure.
I don't like role model the expression because, oh my God, how could I be? You know, being a bad girl all my life with all my bad habits and smokes and, but loving person in your life, I'm for sure, absolutely. Yeah, I always tell my boys, don't marry until you bring your girl here for my approval. And you know, when Ralitsa found Vasily, we took tickets with Henry and flew to Germany to check who this Vasily was. Yeah, on the same time she played two concertos. Yeah, Beethoven, Bach and Shostakovich. Now, a lot of similarity between you and you played Shostakovich. You played Shostakovich. Ralitsa played Shostakovich. You won National Symphony. Ralitsa won National Symphony. You played Schnittke. Ralitsa played Schnittke. Ralitsa was incredible in Bach.
No, I've heard.
You've
And
heard.
then I heard him play Bach, and I was sitting there like,
Ralitsa was
he
sitting.
started 10 years before I did.
Ralitsa was
He had those
here
10 years.
and listening to your Bach performance for the jury and no, for the concert, and she started to cry. Said, "What happened? Why he does what I cannot,
But want to.
but want
cannot.
to?" Yeah. You will see today how all my students influence each other. It's amazing. They look at Ralitsa like an icon. They look at Sam like an icon. They look at other students, Teddy, of course, icon. And some of them ask, did Ralitsa play it when she was my age? Or did Sam do it? Or did... Now Nicholas became an icon, naturally, because he is the oldest one. Berenika, after she saw in a movie that you played bells, she was 8. She said, I want to grow as soon as possible because I want to play this piece. And today at the recital she will play the bells. So it's homage to you, Sam.
Сэм Пост, Соединенные Штаты Америки.
I think Irena is a fount of wisdom for music and for life. We get to see her twice a week for lessons, and we want to remember during the week all the little tips she gave us, whether it's a hand position, a stroking technique, or things that I call Irenaisms, words that she'll give to the students to help them internalize the phrasing of the music. The child is learning how to play piano, and I'm learning how to inspire my child at home. It's very humbling for me to find another adult who can love my child with the patience and kindness that Irena has, and to be able to nurture in him a talent that I cannot do that on my own. With Irena, she has this incredible patience and kindness when she's working with the children, and she's teaching them not just how to practice a piece so that they can perform it proficiently, she's teaching them how to enjoy playing piano. She starts off with a young child actually playing at the piano, and ultimately she's giving them a venue to express themselves uniquely.
I sit through each of Adam's lessons, and he takes twice a week, and I take notes because her method of teaching is completely new to me. And so he is learning, and I am learning. And the thing that I appreciate so much about her really was evident in our very first meeting when we first moved to D.C. was a little bit, almost a year ago now. And the first thing that I realized about her was how gentle she was and how she truly accepted the child at the place that they were, and she appreciated them right there in that moment. And even if she may see potential or want certain results or success for them, in every single lesson she accepts them exactly where they are. And I can tend to get results oriented, and I forget, and I may push too hard. And so taking notes helps remind me not only of the technique that she teaches to play the pieces and to achieve the proper sound and musicality, but it also reminds me to back off and simply enjoy them where they are. And through that gentleness and acceptance, that is where true love of music is born, and that's where the child can really explore their own artistry. And she helps bring that out. And when I sit and I watch and I listen and I see how my son responds, it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I have to take that home and practice that myself as a parent when I sit down and I try to practice with him. She really believes that the quality of the practicing is the most important thing. That if the child goes to the piano and is not happy and does not want to practice and feels pressured and feels like they are not enough and cannot achieve, they won't be able to find their own voice at the instrument. And I love so much in her that she really, as I said, accepts where they are. One day Adam didn't want to play. He didn't want to come in. He didn't want to have a lesson. She let him improvise on how he felt cranky and how he was frustrated and how he was angry at things that had happened in the day. This was a completely new experience for me. Any other teacher that I had ever experienced in my own piano background or any other teacher that either of my children had would have clamped down on that and absolutely not allowed him to show that dissatisfaction. But it was actually her joy and her pleasure to see what he would do with that freedom to express who he was.
I think there was something, you are extremely aware of what a person needs at any given moment. I think that, like, every time I've played for you and studied with you, you always caught exactly what I was, let's say, sometimes yearning to do but wouldn't, trust myself to try it, or, like I hadn't played concertos before I came to study with you. So, of course, when I was given 3 concertos,
you were hungry for them.
Yeah. So that's, you have a fascinating awareness of who this person is who you're teaching at the moment, whether it's a 5-year-old, a 10-year, a 15-year-old, a 60-year-old, doesn't. This is actually somewhat miraculous, this insight into the human personality that you.
Again, I'm not thinking about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about this creature that's in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
This creature wanted to play only Bach, for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Did I stop you?
Never.
No. No. I want to do what they want,
Mm-hmm.
but plus a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy, but it's experience.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I work a lot, many years, right? Secondly, I work with mentally disturbed children,
Mm-hmm.
and that opens the whole road, because actually they are the same, just more open.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, let's say, healthy child doesn't speak about, unhealthy child speaks about.
Mm-hmm.
That's, so that teaches me a lot. And until I really learn who the student is, I even don't start. It takes some time. So it's not miraculous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just old and wise.
I started studying with you, and I was 15, I hadn't played any scales separately from repertoire. It wasn't required in Bulgaria for whatever strange reasons, and my teacher there thought that although I was interested in repertoire, I would be too lazy to practice scales and it would disinterest me, and so she didn't ever ask me to play scales separately. So when I came to study with you, simultaneously two very different things started happening. On one hand, you were discovering for me all these interesting things in music that I never suspected were there, you know, all the expressive possibilities of the musical texture. And at the same time, you were making me play scales. But the unique thing about the scales was that, although I thought it's going to be a dreadful thing to do, you actually made them seem interesting and rather easy, because you treated them as you immediately disclosed all kinds of secrets, like, you know, the things that would make a scale easy, the things that would enable somebody to play a scale successfully, like your fourth finger always plays that note, or, you know, all the black key scales, your fourth finger in the right hand plays B flat, and, you know, all, like, you didn't wait to disclose this information. So this is something unique about your technique teaching, is that you do not make it sound like a painful experience that one has to go through to become wiser and figure it out, but you actually give the secrets right away. Still, since I haven't had the experience to study with you when I was a little child, I'm curious to know, how do you do this with the little kids? How do you make them not dread technique and actually strive to get it?
Before I will answer your question, I will tell you my first experience with Sam. Do you remember? Do you remember?
I've heard the story many times.
You've heard this.
Well, I think I remember too. But.
Sam came for the first lesson, and I asked him to play C major scale. And he started to play, bing, 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 bing. I said, Sam, do you know that you can play much faster? I will just show you how to do that, and you will play fast as a wind. So we did some exercises, we played some exercises, and suddenly that was like the wind. And Sam looked at his hands and said, you did it? So I wanted to tell him that I did it. So, but my exercises, for everyone who wants to know, came from the story that a little hen wanted to fly. You know that hen don't fly, but they want to fly. So, and all my exercises, all the exercises that my students, little students, eager to play, just cannot wait to play, are going from this story, because the hen came to the smartest person she ever knew, a rooster, and asked what to do, because the bird has wings and I have wings. The bird can fly and I cannot fly. And the rooster was thinking and said, before you can fly, you have to learn how to walk. And that's how we start. So the first thing that the hen does, she walks, right? And every step with a quarter, right? And how many steps did you do? Did you do? Yeah. So immediately they are reading. Yeah. And she practiced and practiced. This is the only contest that I use word practice. And then she came to the rooster and said, now can I fly? And rooster said, no. Not yet. You have to practice maybe 1 million. 1 million! I said, no, it's only for for hand. 1 million exercises before you can fly. So, and goes exercise by exercise that I won't tell now, right? Because they are a lot. But they are waiting, every lesson they are waiting. And now what? And now what? And what exercise? And please tell me, did she finally fly? I said, yeah, finally the bird came. After many animals tried to teach the poor hen to fly, dog tried, and turkey tried, and rabbit tried, everybody tried, but she couldn't fly. The bird came, and she put the hen's body and said, this is your beak, this is your tail. Go up with your tail, and when your beak cannot stand anymore on the ground, try to fly. And that's how the bird started to fly. No, hen. And then the bird came to the hen and said, now when I taught you how to fly, could you teach me how to sweep? Because my nest is a mess. Oh, nothing easy. So, and that's how we go with staccato. And then Raita's story came along. Raita told me. And then the cow came and said, what guys, what are you doing? And they said, we're trying to fly, we're trying to do sweeping. She said, it's not what I want to do. Sit down on my head, I will kick the wall, and then you will fly.
I forgot what was the original animal, that's why.
It's yours.
No, but you had another animal who did that. And I forgot
Yeah,
it, so that's how the
I
cow.
also forgot.
I had to come up with
So the cow, I have a cow standing on the piano, and my kids love it. She does move. And then the cow did it and hurt its leg. And then we have a limping cow, legato on 2 notes.
on the technique. You're working on articulation because
sound.
Sound.
Sound. I work on sound from the beginning. I say, Rooster was strong, loud, not humble, and wanted everybody will hear him. So the sound is loud and strong. And the hen was very polite and very timid. So the hen who said, thank you very much. And the chick was very kid, right? And kids are mostly happy, so his sound was happy. And the dog was angry. His sound was angry. And the turkey was lazy. His sound was lazy. And the woodpecker was annoying. He knew only how to knock. Staccato, right? And so on, Sound, on the first 5 lessons, they have different touch. Not only they develop perfect pitch, 80% of them. I wouldn't say that 100, 80, maybe 90. A lot. I have new students now, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. At the end of the year, they develop the perfect pitch. I am not saying that perfect pitch is a necessary thing. I don't have a perfect pitch. Do you have a perfect pitch? No. You do have a perfect pitch.
No, I don't. I have the one related to the piano.
Yeah.
And you have that.
It's not a necessary thing, but sometimes it helps. It's not my goal to develop a perfect pitch. My goal is to develop a relationship with the sound like with reality. It's not an abstract. It's part of the life. Sound can have smell and taste and mood, and sound can be like a flower, and it can bloom and it can fade. So I almost don't work on the sound later on. I don't have to. I don't need to. So that's my story.
Irena intuitively understands people. She's a psychologist, not just a music teacher or a piano teacher. She can read the child. She understands. When my first son came, he was more hesitant back then to let new people into his life, and I thought he had been with his other teacher for 10 years, and he was young, but when he went to Irena, I was fully expecting that it would be a few weeks until they built a relationship, and yet instantly, from that very first minute, she played a little game comparing the size of their hands, had a few words with him, and he fell in love with her instantly and thrived under her. She even knows how to use her psychology on the parents. When I was getting upset because my son was the younger one was making mistakes during lesson that I had thought we had corrected during practice at home, she noticed that he kept looking over to me to see if I was approving and said, "Of course you're not playing like that, because you look over and you see your mother make this nasty face at you." And so I had to check myself and realize that my reaction has just as much of an influence negatively as it can positively. So she just works with each person as they are. She accepts them for what they're walking in with that day. And she reminds us that when you first get a piece, it's not going to be just a few weeks until it's performance ready, and to enjoy the process of learning.
So why have I been staying with Irena for so many years? It's 22, 23 years now, maybe. Because the feeling's mutual. Irena loves me. I love Irena also. She's been a great teacher. She encourages me. If I would stop taking, I would probably stop playing the piano. But coming to see Irena every week gives me the motivation to want to do better and to play for her. I think at my age, I'm probably not improving any longer. I'm probably actually going the other direction, unfortunately. But I enjoy it. I love coming to see her and playing, and her encouragement, and it keeps me going, and it's just a great relationship. She's been a friend for a long, long time.
The boy who was conducting so enthusiastically in the opening of Reaching Beyond is Nicholas Biniaz Harris. 7 years later, I asked him again about Irena.
I think one of the most important things that allows Irena to be so successful as a teacher and a general mentor is that she always has 100% faith in her students. For example, when I was just starting, I didn't really think of myself as much of a musician. I had played piano for 2 years, but I wasn't very good. I couldn't really read music. Accidentals even were challenging for me. And she puts technique aside and tries to realize whatever musical potential each student has within them and tries to work with what the student has. Whereas some teachers, I get the impression that they think that having successful students means having all the students play the same pieces, play roughly in the same way, go to competitions, win, but the performances often end up being not having as much soul as those of Irena's students. And I think that's one of the incredible things that Irena, even when you're just starting, she'll always make sure you play exactly how you feel. And she won't try to change you or try to dramatically overhaul the way you think you should be playing.
And then I understood that if by your life you are making one life easier, so you're okay. Mm-hmm. It's success. Mm-hmm. And I understood second thing, that to stay what you are in a world that constantly wants to make you something else is a very huge job, very difficult. And when you do it, not do, but when you stay who you are, it's also success. I think all this together, remembering the childhood, understanding children, trying to make their life interesting and happy on my lessons. I don't know, give them my love to music, because music is, I just breathe, I think. You know? I cannot compare music with anything in my life. So it's very important, right? When, like I said to Sam yesterday, it's contagious. It's contagious. Your love for music is contagious. I watched Sam when he taught my students, and suddenly this absolutely reserved Sam, Paul, was like, you know, absolutely different creature. All the gestures, all the body language, sparkling eyes, you know, that's what contagious. And that's what I think I have. So that's all.
Perhaps trying to put a finger on what makes Irena's teaching unique is precisely what one should not do in the attempt to understand how she achieves such results with her students. Perhaps the key lies in the very notion that some things are just beyond our ability to explain.